Dear listeners, welcome to the fifth episode of our podcast series Big Data, Big Challenges, and Big Real Success. My name is Anna Przybył, and I will be your host. Speaking from a business perspective, I will ask my guests, experts in data and AI field, questions as they share their insights, real-world challenges, and professional experiences. I hope this will provide valuable knowledge from different perspectives. These podcasts are made possible thanks to the boutique company Sofixit, which specializes in data and AI-related projects, services, and solutions such as data lakes and data lakehouses. Sofixit is also well known for their nonprofit initiatives, which have a positive impact on the entire industry, so it's worth following their LinkedIn channel. Today, we will talk about how can companies benefit from Gen AI, and our special guest is Marcin Bera. Hello, Marcin. How are you?
Hi, Anya. Thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Well, Marcin, could you tell us a few words about you and your world and what you do with the data and what's your place in data world?
Sure. So I have a background. I have background in data science. I've been working in this area for more than 15 years for many companies, but actually for a longer time, I have been working for the largest home appliance manufacturer in the world in various AI and big data leadership roles.
Well, impressive. Well, so what we see now is that Gen AI is becoming more and more popular in industry and in different companies and institutions. The whole world tried to use Gen AI. So why is it so? What are the hope companies have in that respect?
Companies obviously have lots of different expectations regarding Gen AI. The initial buzz that came out after ChatGPT was released has not really gone away at all, but actually it has largely morphed into a more focused action plan. So companies now are trying to ensure value from these newfound technological possibilities. So first and foremost, companies expect Gen AI to help them boost productivity, mostly through automation of repetitive tasks, which will allow them to reduce operational costs. Automation will also not only save time, but also free up employees' brain power so that they can also focus on more demanding and creative work. Although, quite honestly, this is not the message I believe has been raised as frequently by companies' leaders. Aside from cost savings, companies are also hopeful Gen AI will speed up innovation, essentially offering new possibilities to launch innovative products and services, but also to introduce them a lot faster than they were able to do previously. And this is especially important, for example, for personalized marketing. Many organizations hope to see Gen AI or believe that Gen AI is not just the way to grow, but they consider it an essential step to remain competitive, be it due to changes in the global economy or simply they fear that they will miss out on something. If they don't invest in it right now, they will simply cease to exist.
Okay, and of course, everyone feels this hype, feels that can miss something. Do you believe that this is a good reason to use Gen AI?
Is hype a good reason to use Gen AI? I normally would say no, but it's more based on preferences than any objective information. But I think part of this hype is definitely justified. I think it's undeniable that the underlying technology is maturing quite fast, actually, and there is potential to reap significant benefits for the companies already. But there's definitely also the risk of losing a lot of money if the investments fail because the Gen AI change is not done the right way.
Okay, so do you believe that they can really miss something out, the companies, if they don't use Gen AI or if they don't concentrate a little bit more on AI?
I think that companies that do not invest now might miss some competitive advantages. There are some signs already that early adopters are getting benefits as we speak. But I think sooner or later, these technologies will catch up. So definitely they will sooner or later need to adopt what will at that time be a de facto standard solution. So it's more of a question, when do you want to get into that bandwagon, and when is the right time to do it to get this big competitive advantage as possible.
All right. And when it comes to expectations the organizations have with generative AI, do you think that they are justified?
I think so. I think there are actually two answers. Yes, and we'll see. Because there will definitely be very good use cases where this technology is justified. There are some where maybe it will not be as where the expectations are simply overblown. This has been the case with lots of technologies in the past, also with AI several times already, dating back to 70s, where the expectations were very high and the outcomes did not match simply. So that also makes me err a little bit on the safe side here and think that not all we can hear or read about that the companies are working on would be easy to build in a way that will meet the corporate standards regarding reliability and efficiency and other measures of performance. But in general, I think that especially the growth of GenAI over the last year shows a lot of signs of maturing, that the technology is maturing, and definitely I would say the hype is more justified now than a year ago. It's quite difficult to get solid answers to questions about the actual use of AI. Again, lots of companies feel it is needed, that they are there, and they mention that they use AI for this or that function, but what they really mean behind it is not easy to interpret, or not always. Nevertheless, all known reports suggest a big increase in AI spending in 2024 over the previous year. 5 times larger, 10 times larger. So business switches a lot from experimentation to execution. Most C-level executives anticipate that the adoption of Gen AI tools will grow in the near future. There are more and more internal success stories that back up their confidence, which is actually quite funny because lots of studies also suggest that many executives still don't have a clear vision regarding how to implement. So they invest money. It's also not done accidentally. It's just the sign that it's still early stages of this new technology. So they have some educated guess, let's say, how to do it properly, but still this is not enough to have a very clear vision. But overall, yes, I think lots of developments over the past year and increased spending suggest that, and especially some of the success stories that show that Gen AI initiatives that are most mature typically meet ROI expectations and very frequently even exceeded. I think that's a clear sign that this is an important topic also for companies' possible transformation, I would even say, in the next years.
Yeah, probably the successful stories actually enable others to be encouraged to work with Gen AI because they can see that it can really work. Yeah, it's not like an hype only.
That's actually a question if this doesn't actually increase the hype itself as well, right? But definitely that's why we also try to understand more, not just that there is a solution that has helped a given company achieve a certain goal, but also how this actually has happened.
Yep, and if I can just come in here, I would like to ask you because actually we've been talking about C-level people who are responsible usually for giving money to different projects, and they actually decide to invest in Gen AI. Well, I think that especially in Poland, it's visible that a lot of them are trying to get the knowledge. They go to some courses, they try to just at least understand that there are some tools that they can use and how can it work. Actually, there are some programs that make them aware. Can you just confirm that it's actually visible on the daily basis because you work with many companies? How does it look?
So actually, it's interesting you're asking about it. So there is a change in how C-level executives see this change or this technology compared to previous waves of AI. They see its potential very quickly. There are even studies showing that C-level executives use Gen AI tools on a daily basis more frequently than other managers. So they use them operationally frequently, but at the same time, other studies suggest that it's actually executives who are the major blocker in scaling Gen AI solutions. So they invest a lot of money, but they don't necessarily feel that the whole company is ready to use them likewise. They also are frequently over-optimistic in claiming what level of progress has been achieved so far in Gen AI adoption. So people who work in lower levels see lots of different challenges and would not go as far in claiming how big progress has been already achieved as top executives, which is something maybe you would expect. But still, the challenge is that Gen AI really requires, the way it's like the expectations are set, the Gen AI will require really transformational changes in the company, and you can't really do it without this top-down buy-in from C-level executives. There are also some research, actually both from McKinsey and Deloitte, that suggests that in order to be successful, like in those companies that are most mature, Gen AI topic is handled by typically at least two C-level executives or very, let's say, high-level executives. This means they are responsible not just for bringing money or bringing different parties together, but actually also being a change leader, you can use this phrase in this context, really owning the change and being at the forefront of it.
Yeah, so they are responsible for that. It's starting from them, and they are responsible for execution and money and all the development. Am I right?
That's how it should really. So they should be responsible not just for providing money for the change and kind of hoping that all parties will agree on how things work, but also making sure these agreements actually work out. The reason is Gen AI offers or promises to change workflows, to automate lots of workflows. Who can actually do it? Typically, organizational changes that follow are related to establishing an AI center of excellence or AI lab that has the technical knowledge that can largely build solutions, but then these solutions need to be embedded in the actual workflows that companies are using. And this is completely impossible to do without a larger change in the organization. It typically spans over many different departments. And for that to really yield expected benefits, you need push also from the top.
Okay, Marcin. And when it comes to such changes, I think that probably if they decide to change something to use Gen AI, they also concentrate on typical applications of Gen AI. Could you tell us a bit more, because probably our listeners are also curious, what are the typical applications of Gen AI in the companies, bigger and smaller ones?
Yeah, so two of the most major applications of Gen AI as we speak are related to content creation and customer service automations via chatbots or virtual assistants. This is the first one, typically, or unsurprisingly, the reason for it is that developers are AI's earliest power users. So they use a lot of Copilot applications to simply write code faster. And this is actually a good example also of how things sometimes work, right? So the earliest expectation was that Gen AI will simply replace programmers. It doesn't replace them, but it helps, especially senior ones, build applications faster than it has in the past. Maybe it partially replaces already junior developers, but definitely doesn't replace the whole group just yet. In this aspect, Gen AI is already very capable. Most IT leaders report that Gen AI has already met or exceeded its hype in terms of productivity and efficiency. They also report that they needed to reevaluate their technology learning strategy and shifting a little bit how they feel about technologies onboarded, used. They also feel their job is now more important and although less secure. That's what developers say typically. As for the other rather mature use case, chatbots, not a new thing. I guess we're now used to chatbots, right? But they're typically used in customer service for obviously providing reliable and, let's say, knowledge-based, always present support for both internal employees, but also for external customers. But these are the most major cases that, again, we've kind of grown used to already. There are plenty other. Very typical also by now is search. This is actually, in fact, this morning I read OpenAI reports that reported a fourfold increase over the previous 2 quarters over the similar period, the prior period, in the number of users who use the search function in ChatGPT. So that's kind of a new way of using search. And this has been also the case. I think last year was the year where lots of companies also tried to apply this use case, like chat with your own documents, which is really, let's say, advanced search functions, mostly thanks to RAGs, which is retrieved augmented generation type of Gen AI applications. There are, of course, newer use cases also coming along with new possibilities of Gen AI agentic systems, and they comprise automated data analysis, including building SQL queries, building charts, extracting insights from large data sets, also personalized recommendations. But also one thing that I believe will grow, at least let's see what the potential of it actually is. But the one area that lots of companies are really looking into is process automation in the company's core functions. So like HR, supply chain, HR, to automate as many workflows as possible. That's very big group of use cases that will definitely gain traction in the next months and years.
Okay, and if you are a small company and you want to start your adventure with Gen AI, which kind of typical applications would you recommend to start with?
Yeah, it's a very tricky question because we're starting now with just saying that we need Gen AI, and I feel I would answer it differently. First of all, you need to start with where you see money. Like most successful applications are where in these areas where companies seek clear financial impact. That's again not really new, not really something you would not expect, but also something that very frequently doesn't happen because again, there's hype and lots of companies just want to try out Gen AI. This is not the right way to do it. You need to find a couple of use cases, really think them through very thoroughly end to end, like what impact will Gen AI have, not just on a certain piece, but on the whole process. If it means the transformation of half of the workflows in the company, then so be it. But if you don't do it, then there's a very good chance that you will be stuck in you will basically do a lot of work and maybe even automate one part of how company operates, but then you will be stuck in another one in a completely inefficient manner. So I would say either find use cases that you can really think well through end to end, and if this is too difficult, then just start with very simple use cases, right? If you can use something out of the box that will help you, it's probably a good starting point.
All right, Marcin. Actually, what you've said is super, super important, I think, because maybe there should be also the question, why not? I mean, there should be the question, why maybe not to use a Gen AI? I mean, maybe you can do it simpler. Yeah, maybe there is another way out, and it's not just Gen AI, yeah, that you can use to make it work.
Yeah, so in principle, there's always in not just in AI world, but overall, like you use Occam's razor, right? Like if there are two solutions and one of them is simpler and they yield similar results, then you just go for a simpler one, right? That's always the case. Obviously, Gen AI changes very dynamically and its capabilities change as well, which makes this evaluation a lot more difficult. But of course, there are uh, challenges that you may face when trying to implement or later scale Gen AI solutions. One of the biggest obstacles is inaccuracy. In all AI systems, they're non-deterministic, which means they can't really predict results fully. And sometimes use cases only make sense if you get a certain level of accuracy of the models that you're using. And very frequently, these levels are impossible at the given stage of AI maturity to achieve. So then the whole system doesn't make sense. But another type of challenge also related to inaccuracy is simply Gen AI will produce certain errors that the company simply cannot accept. Especially, let's say, some typical examples are, for example, in healthcare. If you want to use Gen AI or any sort of AI for that matter to automate us. Then, of course, the question is what happens if Gen AI doesn't see that a patient has a cancer, for example, right? Automatically. You want human in the loop, which then means you have not automated this enough, right? Is it still efficient? That's another story. But basically, this is of course let's say quite drastic example, but in principle, companies also face lots of similar challenges when they automate their core workflows, right? Like you also don't want too many mistakes if you automate things in HR systems or in your supply chain. You don't want Gen AI to automatically buy materials, for example, from another vendor at 3 times the higher price than you would expect normally. That also, these type of errors are the most important that may prevent Gen AI and, in broader sense, all AI use cases to be implemented.
So there comes the questions how to prevent such mistakes. Of course, it's not easy, yeah, but probably there are some tools or, I don't know, some kind of, maybe to use, I don't know, another Gen AI just to...
Now we're talking like an AI engineer, actually. There are, of course, lots of guardrails, lots of components that you may build to make the system more robust. Like there will always be mistakes, but you should know what mistakes can happen. You should know typically when they happen. You should be able to maybe not automate. That's actually another story that is frequently popping up in media, right? Like we talk about automating things immediately. There are many different levels of automation. Use cases that have been implemented so far, also those that have bring the highest financial value, are very frequently those that only augment human workflows, not fully automate them. So this is one of the things you can consider, right? Like maybe you don't need to automate everything at least immediately. You may still ensure that at a certain point someone takes care of quality, and still this may mean the whole point in implementing Gen AI is valid. There are, of course, all considerations typical for all AI use cases, kind of in the area that you mentioned. So testing, observability of models, and all those technical, let's say, practices that AI teams are fully aware of that typically also require a lot of investment, both in a platform, but also in skills. It's quite easy to use a prompt in ChatGPT, right? Like everyone does it these days, but to really build a solution, AI solution that is reliable, robust, and where you can actually at least know where it's typically wrong, this requires a lot more effort, typically more knowledge than a single person can comprehend. And that's why you need teams that are built also the right way.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. So here comes also the idea of lowest hanging fruit. And maybe this is the solution when you want to start your adventure as a small company, just to try to use the simplest things and try to automate the easiest, the most repetitive tasks that you can do, yeah? And then scale up maybe.
Yeah, that could be the case. Although actually this in this case I consider it the answer to this first step that I suggested in your prior question, right? It's like find proper use case. If you have a clear use case where there are repetitive tasks and you may calculate how much you can save by partially even automating it, then obviously it sounds like a good use case to start with, and then that's something that definitely could be considered. What I would suggest, although, is always, as in all AI use cases, prioritize testing. So like no AI project is successful without testing. I feel most of them do not put enough emphasis on tests, but I feel all parts of AI solutions should have flawless testing pipelines, routines, especially if we expect frequent iterations, lots of changes in models or in the whole pipelines, also including user feedbacks. I feel this will also help spot issues immediately. And one more thing, if you are asking for a piece of advice for a startup, do not stop halfway. Most companies that invest in Gen AI also see it already, that even if you have a good and validated initiative you want to work on, you need to prioritize it, typically over many years, even investments in it. But you would do not expect good results, benefits immediately. There are some examples, of course, where companies already have seen it, but especially for the more complex use cases, you just need to invest a lot, and companies are kind of getting prepared for these longer investments. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint, let's say.
Like a strategy, yeah? It's not like
It is.
one
Yeah.
thing, one. Okay, yeah. It's a marathon. You're right, yeah. And well, okay, but we've talked about the benefits a little bit of investing in Gen AI. So we talk also a little bit about challenges companies face. But what about, we start with some simple Gen AI solutions, but then want to scale it. Yeah, as you've said, it's a marathon. So how can we scale Gen AI solutions and what challenges are connected to it?
Yeah. So if you want to scale, that means typically you also have plenty different use cases where you want to implement Gen AI. One of the things that is clear is you need to have a right AI strategy or Gen AI strategy, which means, as we mentioned earlier, also involvement from the very top of the. Uh, you need to take care of several components there, both, let's say, technical assets, but also the way you organize things. And normally, you would like to avoid small and disjointed efforts. You would not like 10 different teams in your company to work on solutions that are tailored very specifically for their specific needs, also, but you most likely can build a technology that will serve them all or almost all of them. This means such things as simply reusable code. So that's why many companies are going in this direction, that they build AI labs, like a center of excellence that is responsible for um, AI and data governance, and also AI platforms where most of those AI engineers sit. But also then there are some subject matter experts also specialized in AI, but very individual in teams that have actual use case, actual implementations. You need some collaboration between those two. So basically you.
Hold on. So, can you just explain that a little bit more? So, these specialists are like connected to, I don't know, special departments or?
Yeah, there are typically departments that know the business well, that understand actual business needs a lot more, and they normally are not part of the central AI department, where, on the other hand, most of the skills and competencies related to AI are. So there needs to be a certain dialogue, but the bottom line is Gen AI products, as all other AI products, are technical products. So you really think about technology. You don't think I'm doing search of my wiki documents. You think I'm building RAG solution with this or that vector database underneath, and I want to scale vector database for multiple different use cases. That's the language that is used in these discussions. So you need people both in the central lab and in these more business focused units that understands this language and can speak this language, right? With one of them more focused on overall technical proficiency and reliability of the solution, and the other on the actual business impact and requirements. So that's one of the things that you probably do, at least at this stage. Maybe once AI hopefully is like the knowledge about AI, also these technical aspects proliferates more, maybe there will no longer be need for large central departments. But that's the trend that we currently observe. That's one thing. Another is, and obviously that goes in the direction of all use cases, you need to actually also, for the startups, you need to establish initiatives that have very well defined KPIs. It's not establishing KPIs is a sort of afterthought in other areas of business operations, but maybe a little bit surprising, it is still a topic in the world of AI. Lots of activities in that area stem from the fact that there's a cool technology and I want to do something with it, but that's not how this should work. And in fact, there are lots of research also showing that all major reasons for failures of AI are related to reasons beyond the development team being unable to deliver the expected result. It's typically no clear understanding of what the actual result is, too broad scope, not thinking in terms of return on investment, and so forth. So that's why having proper metrics that will be understood by all involved is essential here. And this means not only business KPIs, which are then obviously very important, but very frequently AI use cases are not even about output, they're more about throughput, which means they also, when AI engineers or data scientists work on them, they optimize some technical metrics. Then there are business metrics that really matter to executives, and you need both, and you probably need some more that will link them a little bit. So it's very important to actually think in terms of what exactly this specific application is impacting and measure it at all stages. That's super important. And for scaling, I think it's also very important, because then you can also see where there are actual drivers and where maybe you spend a lot of money but on initiatives that are not important. I think actually knowing where not to spend is an important part of any scaling strategy you might think of.
Okay, Marcin, if I may stop you here just for
Sure.
a second, because here comes this question about this metrics, because we have business metrics, yeah, as you've said, yeah, and also metrics for specialists, AI specialists, data engineers. Could you just give us a few examples maybe of
Yeah,
both?
sure. So let's use the example of developers writing code because I think it's a super simple one. So then maybe it's a good one. So in this case, actually, ML metric were those that were used by the company that has built a copilot tool that the developers are using. So that's something maybe beyond our control. What business metrics, business KPIs would be in this case, I suppose, are savings, like really in terms of dollars, thanks to fewer people involved in coding, simply. And so fewer developers needed for this specific task. But then you don't just track this amount only, you also probably need some metrics that show how frequently actually developers are using it, right? If maybe you have an idea for which task they should be using these AI tools. And if so, does it only help senior developers or junior developers, or maybe only those in some specific technologies? Or maybe you also want to measure for which specific task they need it. Do they need it only if they learn a new technology and they don't really know it, just to have a overview of how things could work, or they use it to simply create a fully functional code that otherwise they would need to write from scratch? So this is the type of thinking here, right? Like where exactly they use, and if they use it exactly for this task which you think they should be using it. I guess this is the idea behind it. And this information will give you more insightful knowledge about how exactly you will get your dollars at the end of the day.
Okay, all right. But here comes, well, I mean, there is this question how to do it. And do you do it like using some checklist, how they use these technologies, or do you have to observe, talk to them, how to just reach this goal, how to
Yeah,
monitor?
sure. That is of course the tricky part because that's when you need to design it. Like no one will of course do it by themselves. I don't really believe you can get this metric simply by interviews because then you will base your information on someone's memory and willingness to actually share what they believe is true. That may not even be true. You need to design a process, right? So basically you might need a group of people to simply track what they were doing for a week, for example, as part of their task, right? Like give this responsibility, like what in a maybe predefined format at the beginning, right? So like think what sort of task they were working on, what was their plan, if they used a tool, maybe give some comments if this helped them. This is how you need to. So simply need to design this whole process. There are no easy made simple answers. Yeah.
Simple answers, yeah, and simple solutions.
But this is also one of the things that is in general true for AI cases, for AI use cases. If you want to, sometimes you need data and it simply just does not exist. And typically, like in many cases, companies try to make use of other data that might be helpful, but is a different question. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But very frequently they resign from the simplest solution, maybe not always simplest to execute, but at least easy to understand, that you can also create some data. And in many cases, that's the best thing you can do, especially if you plan to, as I mentioned earlier, if you need to test solutions, then that's part of the test also, right? Like later on, you assume that you try to measure effects of acquiring new technology, then you also, after implementing it, would like to test it, right? You would like to see if the benefit you wanted to observe prior to deployment, if it still exists afterwards, the natural part of it. So then you will follow the same design that I just mocked up. So then it's really about understanding how this works and thinking it through very well, not just seeing a technology and thinking I will do cool stuff. That's normally not how it works in an efficient way.
Yeah, I'm listening to you and I see clearly that it's not that simple. Even if we are talking about it and we take these simple details, yeah, we see that it's connected from so many things that we have to be aware, yeah, that all of them actually are important and should be considered.
That's exactly the reason why these AI labs that I mentioned a couple of times are centralized, or there's a tendency in companies to centralize this effort, because then there is a certain guidance provided on this. Like there are trained professionals that have idea how to do it, and that's what you need to rely on, basically.
Yeah, thank you for talking a little bit about these benchmarks. They were quite interesting for me. And another thing that came to my mind, when you were talking about it and about all the people involved in the process, was the idea that actually education and understanding of all the details is quite crucial. Do you also, do you have some in your company? Do you have idea how to? I mean, do you have any way of creating this environment of knowledge, of passing the information, of creating this common knowledge?
I believe we do. We actually have lots of initiatives, pretty structured and aligned to provide tailored trainings that are consistent also with our tech stack, for example, for different audience. So really from the top board all the way through data scientists, ML engineers, and other operational experts who are building these applications and writing code. So but then again, this was only made because of lots of reflections and the proper strategy in that area, and driving the needs that this shift into AI brings.
And are the business people involved too? I mean, in the whole process.
They are involved, of course. They are involved in many ways, but of course, the content of the training is typically provided not by business people, but for business people, also for business people. But their feedback is definitely very important to navigate and decide what our next educational purposes should be. Like what other trainings to provide, which to change, update, and so forth. That's pretty much directly comes from the business needs, either expressed literally or not even than that.
Okay, so do you really see the value? I mean, because I believe that when you educate those people at the C level, they are probably more eager to understand more and more eager to invest or just resign, yeah, from some projects. I mean, they are more aware, and thanks to that, maybe also more aware of some risks and of course of some advantages of Gen AI. I don't know whether maybe do you understand my question correctly, but I mean that probably this education works both ways, but it also works great for C-level people, people who are in charge of decisions and understanding the whole process. And probably when we think about AI first companies in the future, maybe the strategy of becoming such company, or at least to have a lot of Gen AI on board, it's good to have this knowledge inside the company and to educate all the people at all the levels and all the departments. Do you have that vision, or is it difficult? Is it easy?
Of course, it's difficult for many reasons, including also a sheer number of people working on it, and also this being a new topic and not yet structured enough, let's say, hints from applications, which pieces of knowledge make sense, which not. It's more like directions, hints, and trying to talk to people from other organizations and all companies that actually monitor the market in this respect as well, to have an idea what to do next. But overall, it is definitely important to educate all possible users, because at the end of the day, this has a potential to be a transformational change, right? I guess we also mentioned at the beginning. So, but who should know what then is quite tricky, and you cannot do it simply from AI trainer perspective, right? That's where you need a top-down change, where you need clear strategy. This clear strategy should also comprise a way to achieve this goal, to understand the educational needs of different groups. Actually, this is something that also some research currently suggests, that the role of C-level executives is now also changing a little bit from those who provided money for investments continue to do so, but also to make sure that adoption of AI in various departments, not central AI units, but the actual business departments, is speeding up. And only when this is decided and there's common knowledge in the company where and for which reasons knowledge is needed, only then you can follow up with actual educational trainings, I believe.
Okay, yeah. Think so. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Marcin, and for elaborating a little bit on that, because it seems to be quite interesting and actually up-to-date topic, because when we start with new technologies, there are some questions how to do it. So, Marcin, coming back to what you were talking earlier in our previous conversation about human in the loop and the reliability of Gen AI, what can be done to ensure that our Gen AI applications are more reliable? Or will be more reliable?
That is, of course, one of other essential issues in scaling Gen AI solutions. So there are a couple of strategies. One of them is traditional make or buy. So for many companies, it's actually a good way forward to simply use one of the Gen AI vendor platforms that are available. This is especially useful for all proof of concept initiatives where you want to try out certain models. That's how most companies actually begin with, right? Like you use OpenAI or other vendors' pre-trained models hosted in a cloud that is secure, or at least you have certain contracts with the vendor that make you think the data is secure and executed in a secure environment. Many companies actually at some point start considering building their own models or their own infrastructure if they need more customized and applicable to their own business circumstances models. Then they can go for some strategies other than using pre-trained models, like even if they don't want to build their own foundational models because this is super expensive right now, but they have some possibilities like also fine-tuning models. Like there are lots of already well-known techniques for that, like LoRa, for example, which typically is simply cost efficient. It's not as powerful as a dedicated large language model, but a lot more powerful for the specific task than the base model. But if you do this, of course, you need to take care of the infrastructure pretty much the same way as you would do in any other AI training scenario. This means in both cases, like either you use a vendor's platform or you build your own platform where you need to take care of pretty much the same aspects as in any other scenario. This really has lots of similarities with other IT projects. So you need to think about good integration capabilities, for example, with core systems, right? It's pretty important that if you want to automate some workflows in your HR system, that you can actually do it, and there are no technical or other impediments that make it impossible to proceed. If you select a vendor, you also should look for one that has certain history with maintaining data in a safe way, like consistently with data protection standards like GDPR, for example, but also similar acts in non-European countries. Take cybersecurity standards like SOC2, for example, right? There's this systems and organizations control standard that is also probably not that difficult to check if companies are really sticking to it. You also want to have certain functionalities within the platform, right? You want to have some guardrails available out of the box. You want some observability components. Basically, it's kind of like a new IT infrastructure project. You normally know if you or there is knowledge in the company what should be taken care of, and you just should treat it like a checklist, really, right? Like see if vendor is providing that, and if not, then you just need to think how to do it in a secure and compliant way on your own, right? If these functionalities are not provided out of the box. I'm talking about vendors because typically these applications also consider at least some dependency on vendors, either for calling models only, but typically also they're hosted in one of the popular cloud environments, which are also offered only by a selected group of vendors, which then means some of the security measures are sort of outsourced, basically, and you simply have a contract with a specific company related to how you use it, and there's some guarantees based on SLAs that they need to stick to.
Okay, Marcin, if I may interrupt, when it comes to vendors, is it a good idea to use the vendor that we have the contract with? I mean, you use the cloud of this specific vendor and you decide on the infrastructure for AI that will be actually from this, not the other vendor.
Mm-hmm.
How does it look?
Yeah, so this is there are a couple of aspects. So first of all, typically cloud vendors provide lots of very advanced security measures that most companies would not be able to take care of themselves. So that's obviously a good selection from this perspective. Secondly, they also offer good integration between different services. So it's if you build a whole application within one cloud solution, it's normally easier to deploy, to maintain, and scale also than if you use some combination of tools. This may also be a lot more expensive because very frequently there are lots of cheaper or simply open source alternatives to many of the services. And then if a lot of the buzz is about operational efficiency, this cost factor is something you definitely need to consider. So then you feel it's more work and it's more difficult to maintain, but at the end of the day, it's let's say one time, not really one time, but let's say one time development cost is higher, but then the maintenance cost is a lot lower than if you just go for only one vendor. And always there's a risk of vendor lock. Maybe this should also not be just a binary factor, right? Where you either have it or not. Because I guess with many pieces of software in your company, you probably back to a certain vendor anyhow for a long time once you've selected and migrated lots of workflows there. You're probably stuck there for many years. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. But in so rapidly changing landscape, you also might miss out on some other opportunities if you only stick to one vendor all the time by design.
So if you build, just correct me if I'm wrong. So sometimes maybe it's better to be like independent and build your own infrastructure and decide on the model, decide on the, of course, maybe it's more, well, it's not so cheap then for sure.
Yeah, it's true that for some specific cases, this is way to go, but then I would imagine this has to be very, very concrete use cases. No, you need to have very very low latency, for example, right? Like you really do matter for you. Then it may make sense to have infrastructure very, very close to where it's actually executed. There might be concerns of security for some very sensitive information, then it can also have some impact. But I would say for most companies, rather not. I guess it's very frequently, again, either very, very specific use cases or some entities that are, let's say, most likely public entities, not private ones that might need this additional layer of privacy and security. I think for most companies, this is, of course, something they can think of, but it's currently, it seems like simply a big investment, a completely different skill set, and a lot of time that you need to spend up front with many obstacles to fend off along the way that you can't even think of before you are at the stage where you can be probably within a couple of weeks if you go for a vendor-based solution. So it really has to be justified by some say very concrete business requirements, or maybe not business.
Yeah, and probably if you have your own solution, you need your own specialists because if you
That
have
as well.
cloud solutions, it's probably easier to get the knowledge and share this common knowledge with people on some discords or
Yes, there's always community, right?
exactly. So
And also these solutions also have their own chatbots that will help you greatly.
okay,
Right
so
now,
if you are starting, it's a better way, and also for developing companies, yeah, that it's also a good way to start with cloud, especially if they are becoming more and more popular. I believe so, and we are more eager to work with them. Okay, and here we come to the very end of our discussion. And so the last question, Marcin, if I may ask, would be connected with the future. So what's in the cards for Gen AI?
yeah, so this is a very good question, of course. I think some of the use cases that we mentioned earlier that are only growing right now, they're mostly based on agentic AI, like data analysis and extraction of insights, most process automations in major company functions. And I feel there will be, let's say, further growth in agentic systems in the next 2-3 years at least. And we should also expect more investments because it feels super powerful. Early experiments give very good results. And I think potential benefits are also very, very promising. So that's kind of a safe horse to bet on. I think there will be also more chatbots with specialized search. They have also started to pop up now. Like you can have a chatbot specifically related for search over research articles. There will probably be more like that. And if they proliferate even further, then probably there will be some umbrella chatbots that will collect information from some individual chatbots, right? Which is, again, kind of leads us into more of an agentic system, I guess. I think also multimodal agents will be a thing. They will not only rely, of course, on textual data by design, but also I think lots of companies will try to integrate them into the existing infrastructure and existing workflows. The major reason I think why it's been mostly about text right now is actually because text is cheaper to process than visual and audio, like simply for memory limits. I think also another reason is the text has some very clear use cases. We have lots of digitized content now available and in a pretty structured way. So that's like a good starting point, let's say, for all those deep learning based um, Gen AI models, NLP based Gen AI models. But I think other modalities will also gain traction quite soon. So obviously a lot of fun ahead.
Yeah, that's true. So that's it for today's episode. A big thank you to all our listeners for tuning in. We really appreciate you being with us on this Gen AI journey. Don't forget to follow our LinkedIn channel to stay updated. And of course, special thanks to Marcin Bera. Bravo, Marcin.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, for all your insights and helping us explore these promises and challenges of Gen AI. And I think until next time.
Thank you for having me. Until next time, definitely. Thank you, Anya.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.